We are both senior lecturers in graphic design at Falmouth University, and MOTH is a research project that we've run for a number of years. And as Julie Marie said, we investigate the skills and contribution which communication designers can make to death studies and end-of-life experiences. We're examining contemporary attitudes and anxieties to death, dying and belief systems. And our research hopefully begins to investigate how we can confidently express negative emotions in both the digital and analog realm, creating evolved graphic language to help navigate grief and sadness and to communicate empathy and loss in our social relationships. There we go. Sorry. Today we're here to talk about our project, The Goodbye Box, which aims to support and help children begin to understand and come to terms with death. Our natural instinct is to protect children from sadness, but death is obviously a natural part of life. And if we were able to approach it together and see it as an opportunity to learn from at an appropriate level for that child, that is really important. The Goodbye Box product facilitates an opportunity for us to be able to say a proper goodbye to our pets. And however difficult this is, we think that it's important and ultimately better than unanswered and possibly confusing assumptions which children might come to without the proper dialogue and support. There are three elements to our product. There's the box itself, which is the coffin or facilitates the pet's ashes. And this really offers the opportunity to have some sort of ritual or ceremony, some sort of publicly, some way to publicly validate that loss. There's a book which says Goodbye to Dr. Tinkle, and this essentially is about storytelling and for children and advice for adults. There's also a card which offers the opportunity to create some sort of eulogy or photo message to celebrate the life of that pet and facilitate the letting go. In a study called In Praise of Dead Pets, an investigation into the content and function of human-style pet eulogies, Renard, Greening and Williams in their paper assessed the value of the eulogy as being a therapeutic memorial device for bereaved pet owners. So this could be a note, a photograph, a drawing by the child, or a poem or a story. But before we go into detail of the product itself, we wanted to give some sort of context as to the why. So who was Dr. Tinkle? Well, Dr. Tinkle was a beautiful pet rabbit belonging to my daughter Martha, whom she named after Kenneth Williams, the character in Carry On Doctor, which I apologise is incredibly un-PC these days. But it was her choice, so we all went with it. But when he died, when Dr. Tinkle died, I felt particularly rather lost as to what to do and say. I wanted to be honest about what had happened. I wanted to be kind. I wanted to be protective. I wanted to be practical all at the same time. This was her first experience with death, and I knew that I needed to get it right. So this is a quote from the brilliant Maria Popova, and she writes, "If death is so enormous a mystery that we remain unable to wrap our grown-up minds around it, despite comfort from our great poets and consolation from our great philosophers, how are tiny humans to make sense of it? Although there exist some exceptional children's books about loss and grief, explaining death to a child remains one of the most challenging tasks for a human being to undertake." From a paper from the Scottish SPCA in 2017, they wrote that the attachment to pets has an important role in children's social, emotional and cognitive development. It's positive for good mental health, well-being and quality of life. Pets provide children an opportunity to learn, to practice, to become motivated to nurture another living being, and to practice perspective-taking skills. Pet care can potentially facilitate and foster a child's moral development as they begin to reason about issues of justice, kindness, fairness, and what is seen as morally right with respect to animals and animal welfare. But we know that our pets' lives are short, and love and loss of them is heartbreaking. The received wisdom is that it's not good to scare kids. Maurice Sendak, the illustrator and writer, believed that they were already scared due to his rather traumatic and unconventional childhood. There's a wonderful story about him with his Polish grandmother who dressed him in a white suit, a white shirt, white tights, white shoes, took him out on the step to sit with her. And the idea was that the angel of death would pass over them and think that he was already an angel and there was no need to snatch him for his family. So it's no wonder that much of his work exists between play and terror. In the book The Violet Hour, Great Writers at the End, Katie Rolfe writes about Morris. She said, he'd always been obsessed with death. He drew through his obsession. He drew lions that would swallow you, wild things that gnash their terrible teeth, faceless hooded goblins stealing babies, bakers that would bake you in a pie. He drew funny, charming, haunting near deaths. He liked to tell the story of a daughter of a friend who was at school near the World Trade Center when the towers fell. She told her father that she saw butterflies on the buildings as the towers collapsed, later admitting that they weren't butterflies, but she knew that they were in fact people jumping. But she didn't want to upset her father by letting him know that she knew. Children do protect their parents, which is the funny part of childhood that slips away from us, the awful knowledge that that contains. Storytelling is a timeless teaching tool, and expression through text offers readers of all ages the opportunity to find solutions through the characters and conflicts within a story, and thus within themselves. It's essential for children to learn coping skills needed to be successful in handling distress, frustration, anger, and knowing that these are part of their daily life, and to be able to emerge with a sense of self-control, hope, and most importantly, perhaps resilience. There's plenty of great children's literature out there which deals with bereavement for children. This one, particularly The Duck, Death and the Tulip by Wolf Elbrook. This story implies that death is really just a part of life, and he appears as a close companion. The book doesn't seek to provide answers, but it does provoke questions and help motivate discussion. And Goodbye Mog, which I'm sure lots of people will be familiar with. This is by Judith Kerr, and the tale of Mog's death and how her family love her, remember her, and how Mog's spirit watches over them. This beautiful Norwegian book by the illustrator and writer Lund, about a boy who tries to come to terms with the death of his own mother, and through the comfort and security of his father's care, they try to make sense of this strange world of ours where love and loss go hand in hand. And Michael Rosen's sad book about the tragic loss of his son Eddie at the age of 20 from meningitis. This book gives license to us to be sad, to be angry, to be disbelieving. And sharing and airing these emotions are really important, not to hide or suppress grief, but to learn and live with it and through it.
So at the start of our project, we researched what was commercially available for pet owners' needs. We discovered there is a rising popularity of pet crematoriums and cemeteries, which is due to an ever-growing number of pet owners who wish to give their animals a more formal send-off. There are more than 50 crematoriums and cemeteries in Britain that offer pet funerals, including services such as tombstones, custom-made coffins, religious blessings. The bigger funeral parlours already carry out up to 10,000 services for animals a year. Earlier, Kevin mentioned Penwith Pet Crematorium, which is in our neck of the woods in Cornwall. Individually, they cremate an average of 200 animals per week, double the number a decade ago. We were interested in the price ranges from £42 for a hamster or a guinea pig and up to £187 for a large dog. Interestingly, it costs £900 to bury a horse. They are too big to be cremated at Penwith. This is not just a British phenomenon. The industry of pet cremation and burial, or pet loss as it's known, is now a big business globally. According to US-based trade body Pet Loss Professional Alliance, the average annual turnover of its members around the world in 2013 was $860,464, which is roughly £500,000 a year turnover. So further exploration into online services, in particular coffins for home burials, took us to buying and selling sites such as eBay and Etsy with their standardized casket boxes and templates for pet portraits and memorial messages. The services available vary greatly in price and aesthetics. We were struck by the cost implications these services may offer and the affordability and suitability of these products and services. The most sensitively and thoughtfully designed pet coffins we came across was the creation of New Zealand designer Matt Burgess and his product Rest in Pets, with their biodegradable cardboard caskets and cute illustrations. The design and the messaging encouraged a dignified and personalised farewell for pet owners. Interestingly, the cardboard caskets are available in New Zealand vet clinics as well as online. We're aware our product is not unique. Now to return to our product, as Nikki mentioned earlier, the Goodbye Box aims to support and help children begin to understand and come to terms with death, giving us the opportunity to be able to say a proper goodbye. Key points focused on children's needs, for them to be included in the decision making, to allow the space to honour the role that the pets had in their family, to celebrate the life of the deceased, to be able to publicly validate their loss, and to begin to make sense of the world, giving license to feel sad and angry, knowing that love and loss go hand in hand, and to develop coping skills to emerge with a sense of hope and resilience, and for the adults to provide a framework, a set of tools. So this diagram illustrates the box, the Goodbye Box. So it comes pre-scored and cut and is easily assembled without glue or sticking. It is modelled on the idea of a beautiful palace or a mausoleum. The design range could be added to with pyramids, ships, etc. It could be coloured in and a photo attached to the door. Essentially, the child should have ownership over it and feel included in and part of the decision making. Essentially, the coffin is for small pets and being used as a box for ashes for larger animals. Our hope is that it could be sold at a modest cost in the Blue Cross centres and perhaps in veterinary surgeries, with all profits going directly to the charity. In its simplest and purest form, it could also just be a downloadable PDF, which they can simply stick onto a shoebox. So the next element is the book, Saying Goodbye to Dr. Tinkle book. It's something to be read with your children so that discussions can take place and a sense of context established for the child, as well as guidance for the adults on each page, which offers practical advice and support. These are some of the pages from the book. The text that accompanies the illustrations is written from the perspective of a child. And I'd like to just read some examples of the text. Dr. Tinkle was a rabbit. He was my first pet. He arrived on my 4th birthday. I love him so much. Why had he died? So this is further down in the text. Was it my fault? And what would happen to him now? Further extracts from the story. Dad planted some bulbs in the soil so the flowers would grow where we had buried him. And I found some stones and made the letter T in a heart shape on the ground. Mum made my favourite dinner, spaghetti followed by chocolate ice cream with sprinkles, which helped to cheer us all up. I am glad I was able to say goodbye to my sweet rabbit. Goodbye, Dr. Tinkle. Saying goodbye to your pet. So the guidance information provides advice for parents to answer their children's questions, as well as dealing with practical issues such as the pet's body, the depth of grave you should dig to avoid scavengers, when to consider getting another pet, etc. This diagram illustrates the simpler option, the free online resource. So the online book and a downloadable template to stick onto a shoebox, as well as a card for a goodbye message to be included in the box and written by the child. So we are still in the prototype phase of the Goodbye Box. We are excited by the potential of our project and would welcome free feedback from individuals and organisations. That concludes our presentation. Many thanks for listening. If you'd like to contact us, please visit our website, which is listed there, or email us. Many thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much to both